to our, what month is it, April meeting.
Yeah.
We'll get started with the Pledge of Allegiance, so if you'll join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I don't have a whole heck of a lot of updates. Make sure you mark your calendars for our Memorial Day service. It'll be held this year on Saturday, May 27th at 9 a.m. at Royal Cemetery, as it usually is. So make sure that you mark your calendars. Always a meaningful service, and we're always, honored to do it. So we hope to see as many of the members there as we possibly can get. For those of you that are board members, we have a board meeting tomorrow night at 6:30 p.m. on Zoom. I will send a link. I have been derelict in my duties. I have not sent a link to this point. I will do it when I get home this evening, though. Yes. It'll probably get sent at Wednesday at 6:05 p.m., but that's okay. We aspire to better, right? Absolutely. Tonight, we are joined by Paul and Denise, or, if you will, General and Mrs. Greene. Paul and Denise are both avid American Civil War enthusiasts. Paul is a member of the Federal General Corps based out of Pennsylvania and has been an active living historian portraying Brevet Major General George Sears Greene for the past 13 years at many major reenactments. While portraying General Greene, Paul has given presentations on various aspects of the Civil War at schools, colleges, museums, and historical societies. Paul and Denise, as General and Mrs. Greene, tonight will discuss the impact that the Battle of Chancellorsville had on the Union and Confederate commanders, officers, and men who fought at the Battle of Gettysburg 2 months later. So if you'll join me in welcoming General and Mrs. Greene.
Thank you very much, Mark. And dear, we're scheduled to go visit your family in Boston. You think we have time to do that? You don't want to? I'm having issues with the family. So am I. So if you kindly in the war, I commanded a brigade, I commanded divisions, and always under commanders that I just about respected. Okay? And after the Battle of Gettysburg, which our Union troops won, it was a very difficult victory, as many of you know. It just didn't come easily. But when you think of the Battle of Gettysburg, you have to go back and think of Chancellorsville. Because a lot of the issues that we faced at Gettysburg were born out of that battle. So let's take a look at both of these battles and see what factors really impacted both of those battles, and frankly had a major impact on the Battle of Gettysburg, which we finally beat Lee. That was always our goal. It wasn't the commanding general's goal, because their orders, the commanding generals, their orders was to protect Washington City. Lee was a secondary issue. If we can get him, fine, but we must have to protect the city of Washington City. It's now, let's go back to the winter of 1863. The Battle of Fredericksburg had been lost badly. We are at the 12th Corps. I belong to the 12th Corps, and we are at Acquia Landing, while the rest of the Army is at Falmouth and right outside of Fredericksburg. Ambrose Burnside loses his position. Joe Hooker is appointed commander, and Joe Hooker has great plans for the Army. And we're all excited for him, because what he did for this Army was restructure it. He retooled it, new uniforms, better medications, better camps. He instituted the Corps badges. He got rid of the grand divisions, where several corps fought together as part of divisions. There were 3 grand divisions, and that didn't work. There was just too many people, and there were too many moving parts in terms of how you command that. So here we are, the 12th Corps, commanded by Henry Slocum, and we had 2 divisions. This is the smallest corps in the Army of the Potomac. We have General Williams, 1st Division, and my commander is John White Geary, not a West Point graduate. There are issues. Our division is made up of 3 brigades. Charles Candy is the 1st Brigade. Thomas Kane has the 2nd, and I've got the 3rd. See a nice picture of me? There we are. See, that's my winning smile. That's the typical smile you'll see out of me. I'm a very serious commander. I don't take any baloney from anybody, not even my superiors. Most of them kind of fear me because they know my record. My record is to attack or defend and to fight like heck to win. Whether we're defending and holding back the enemy like at Cedar Mountain or making the furthest attack and push at Antietam near the Dunker Church, where if I would have had the reinforcements and ammunition that I begged General McClellan to send me, I think I had Jackson in my sights. But we had to pull back because the only thing I could throw at the enemy were corn cobs. I was running out of ammo and I didn't have the force that I needed. At Chancellorsville, we're going to talk about that and you're going to see what really transpired there. But here we are in the winter of 1863, and Joe Hooker knows. He promises Lincoln that he's going to take Robert E. Lee. He even vows that God may have mercy on Lee, but I will have none of it. So General Hooker has a plan. He institutes the Department of Military Information under Colonel Henry Sharp. He's got Theodore Lowe's balloons. He's got a lot of information that the Pinkerton boys didn't provide to McClellan. He knows where Lee is. He wants to get around him, but silently. He doesn't want to let anybody know what his plan is, so it doesn't leak out. Unfortunately, he doesn't tell his corps commanders what he's thinking until it is way too late. So now we don't have green divisions, we have corps. So at Chancellorsville, we have Joe Hooker as the commander, and these are the corps. The 1st by Reynolds, Darius Couch has the 2nd, Dan Sickles the 3rd, George Meade the 5th, John Sedgwick the 6th, Oliver Howard the 11th, George Stoneman has the cavalry, big mistake, and Henry Slocum, my commander, of the 12th. Robert E. Lee, let's take a look at his forces. He has 2 divisions. They're very large. At Chancellorsville, he's going to have 60,000 men. 2 divisions. Longstreet, a good portion of his division is south of, he was sent south into Virginia to gather food and supplies. He only left behind 2 divisions. He left behind Applause and Anderson's divisions to be with Robert Lee. So with him gone, guess who commands those troops? It's Robert Lee. So Lee will handle the remaining forces that under Longstreet, and Jackson has 30,000 men at his beck and call. And they are basically at Fredericksburg. So our forces, the Army of the Potomac will have 134,000 men against Lee's 60. However, Hooker will not utilize all 134. Why? Who knows? He got scared, but never used the 5th Corps like he should have, and never the 1st Corps. 1st Corps would have gone on a picnic, nobody would have noticed. But here's the plan. Lee is at Fredericksburg, right here. But he commands George Stoneman and the Corps, the Cavalry Corps, is to go up and around Lee's forces and go down into southern Virginia to intercept the railroad and knock out Lee's supply trains. This is key. Because if Lee has no supplies, the trains stop running, guess what? He's going to have to move. And what Hooker expects is that Lee will head towards Richmond, but before then, maybe we can get behind him and force a battle and get him into a snare and capture him or destroy his army. That's what he wants to do. He tells nobody. The only person who knows is Stoneman. So in late April, orders come out that the Army of the Potomac will move. Will move north against the Rappahannock. Is the major river that we're crossing at Fredericksburg and near Chancellorsville. And then it's a tributary of the Rapidan. And along the river are fords where the Army can cross. There are bridges there to cross, and that's what we'll be using. So on late April, the Army moves. At Fredericksburg, he leaves 2 corps. He leaves the 1st and the 6th. Let's remember when generals get wounded. When generals get wounded, oftentimes they get conservative. They used to be good fighters. They used to be very dynamic leaders. But once they're wounded seriously and come back into command, it's a little bit more reserved, a little bit more careful. And that's what we'll find with John Sedgwick. Uncle John is going to be very conservative and not act as fast as he should have. What happens at the end of April is we do get behind Lee. We cross the rivers, and we're coming into the Chancellor House, and we're behind him. We accomplished it. The problem we have in every army that has to deal with this part of the countryside called the wilderness, which used to be a major forest where the trees were cut down for the production of iron. Catherine Furnace is the only one left. But that's what, now it's just scrub brush, new trees, very difficult to get through. Very difficult to move an army very quickly. But we'll see General Howard really believes that the wilderness is a very good protection against any invader. Nobody's ever going to come through the wilderness. Are you kidding me? What, you're worried about the uniforms getting scratched? I have no idea, but he really believed that. But we're behind Lee. So Lee, on April 30th, sits with Jackson. And they figure out what they're going to do. We're going to run. We're going to stay. We can't do the. How about if we attack? We attack them. We're short-handed, but that doesn't matter. I did it on a peninsula where I was outnumbered. We can do this again. We're going to go and meet the enemy on the battle, on the roads, on the turnpike and on the plank road. We are not going to retreat. And so that's what Lee plans to do. So he divides his army because he leaves about 10 to 15,000 men at Fredericksburg under Jubal Early. And they make a lot of noise, and they actually prevent the 1st and 6th Corps from moving across the river and attacking, and they should have attacked them. And they could have pushed them back. Don't forget, we outnumber Lee by a significant margin. Oh, well over 2-1. Almost 3-1. So on the first day, on May 1st, Slocum sends out elements of the 5th Corps and the 12th Corps. And we're moving along the turnpike, moving along the plank road, and what do we run into? We run into Longstreet's 2 divisions, McLaws and Anderson's division, and we have a fight. And it's really a great fight. We're being pushed back, we're pushing back, but now we could certainly call in for the reserves. We have the whole 5th Corps and the whole 1st Corps that could come in, as well as the other Corps, the 2nd and the 3rd. Hooker, for no reason, nobody can figure out, decides to pull us back. In the middle of a fight, he pulls us back to Chancellorsville, to the Chancellorsville house, because now he's going to fight a battle of defense. And remember what defense does. If you got lousy ground, you're dead meat. If you've got good ground, you can hold and defend. This is bad ground. We got a whole flank of the wilderness, plus he's pulling us into a blue ball. So by collapsing our troops from the roads and letting Lee march towards us, we have lost the initiative of this battle. We are waiting for Lee to take the offensive, to take the offense and push us back. And frankly, He's governing the battle right now. So the end of the first day, after the battle and pushing back, we are all around the Chancellor House. Following day, Lee decides to do something even bolder. He decides to split his army again. He's going to let Jackson go around, hopefully around the Union Army, flank them, and attack them from the flank. Now, what's interesting about this, the 11th Corps is the corps that is on the extreme right flank of the Union Army. They don't recuse their line. As you see, at Gettysburg, we know that Colonel Chamberlain recused his line to meet the enemy attack from the side, from the flank. I certainly did that at Culp's Hill and Gettysburg. But here, the 11th Corps is just lined up on the turnpike and they don't turn. What's interesting also is that the Union Army has evidence that there's people marching on the road near them. They know, they can hear Jackson's troops all day long. That the 11th Corps was given ample warning that they could be attacked on their front. Nothing was done. Nothing. Regimental commanders, some of the brigade commanders were screaming to rearrange their flank so they could meet the enemy head on. So what Jackson does is he goes south. Now Sickles is here. He will come here to Hazel Grove and Catherine Furnace. They can see him. Hey, look, they're retreating. He's going south. Jackson must be going back to Virginia, back to Richmond. And Sickles does attack the rear guard, but that's all. But what Jackson does, he goes south, then he goes north, and he comes in from the side, from the flank. So all day long, they were warned, nothing was done. Nobody paid attention to the fact he went south. They all assumed, including Hooker, that we finally beat Lee. Look at him, he's going south, he's retreating. Not so. So late in the afternoon, as we know, Jackson attacks, flanks. The 11th Corps comes up running, skedaddles out of the flank, and then met by the 12th Corps, my corps, and the 3rd, elements of the 3rd. And we, with cannonades and with brigades, the fight sort of stops late in the afternoon, which was a disaster. We know Jackson gets killed. He ventures further into the field of battle. He wants to stake it out because he wants a night fight. We don't have night fights in the Civil War. But I did. Culp's Hill will have a night fight. But he wanted to pursue this. He wanted to pursue, but his own men shot him. If you don't get shot, Jackson gets shot, and Jeb Stuart is taking over the corps. So obviously Jackson is taken off and will die very soon, and a few days later. But now Lee has lost his best general. But that doesn't mean he's lost the battle, because Lee just isn't going to quit. That's the thing, he hates to lose. He is not lost. So why should he lose here? So what happens on day 3 is that we're going to find that Jeb Stuart will attack, and so will Lee, will come up from the south. General Sickles, who's sitting on Hazel Grove, he's at the high ground. He's ordered back towards the Chancellor House. Why in the world that was done is beyond me. It's beyond all of our generals. We couldn't believe it. The 3rd Corps coming back towards the Chancellor House. We had prepared breastworks. We were told to pull out of them. And then Porter Alexander puts his guns right on Hazel Grove. And you can see this is a new rendition. But look, high ground, and that's where we'd be. We got hammered that day. Every shot seems to hit us. hits a 12th, and we're the ones taking the biggest hit. Sickles, when he's pulling back, is getting attacked from Judge Stewart's troops. So this is a real mess for us to pull back. And it's going to have a big impact on Dan Sickles at Gettysburg. Because now he had to relinquish, he was ordered to relinquish the high ground. And we know that mid-morning, a cannon fire hits the Chancellor House, and debris hits Joe Hooker, and he's unconscious for over an hour. And even when he retained consciousness, he never relinquished order of the command of the army. Darius Couch, who's the senior general in the field, never ever asks him or tells him, change the command. Give it to me, because we still can attack. We have the 1st Corps, 5th Corps waiting to move, and we could have snared Lee even at the Chancellor House. It wasn't done. So we did not have good communication. The leadership was missing, and we had a commander who was scared. And this is another rendition of the same. The Union troops are like a big blue ball around the Chancellor House, where the 1st Corps and the 5th Corps are far away from the battle line, and even the 2nd Corps will pull back, and they will actually cover our retreat. So the amount of men that was wasted that could have been used to attack Lee were not there. And so the fighting is very hard near the breastworks, but the Confederates overwhelm it, and we have to retreat this position. What about our good friend John Sedgwick? John Sedgwick finally moves, but a little too late. The communications, the telegraph communications were horrible in this area, I think portion because of the wilderness. The battery-operated telegraphs were not working, and so the communications throughout the army was very poor. But finally he moves, and as we know, that John Sedgwick will fight at Salem Church along the Turnpike Road. General Early will be on his flank, and Lee will be there, and after that battle, we have basically lost this battle. Because if Sedgwick had moved faster, we could have actually flanked Lee. It wasn't done. So here we are. On the 6th, we actually leave. We retreat. We're outnumbering the army of Northern Virginia 2-1, 3-1, and we retreat across the Rappahannock, and we go lick our wounds back at Falmouth and Acquia Landing. May 6th is when it was done. That's my birthday. So what a present I received from my commanding general. Happy birthday to you. There was no cake. There might have been some booze, but there was no cake. I can tell you that. So for the next month, for all of May and beginning June, there was no activity. We retooled, and then we know that Robert E. Lee moves north. And why wouldn't he? He won again, convincingly. Divided his army twice, well outnumbered. Out-generals the Army of the Potomac again. And now he's going to go into Pennsylvania to regroup, supplies, and hopefully pull away troops from Vicksburg. Because if he's successful in the north, Grant may have to release some troops. So he's moving on June 9th. We have a battle at Brandy Station where now our cavalry does us justice. They fight in Upperville and Albany. But as you can see, the red line is Lee's troops. The green is us, basically us. So the corps are moving north. They're moving into Maryland and they're going into Pennsylvania, but we're not all together. They're on different roads. And on June 28th, after Hooker keeps pleading with Lincoln to fire certain generals, Lincoln has had enough. Darius Couch refuses to fight for Hooker ever again. Does not want to serve, and now he's going to end up going west. And so, on June 28th, General George Gordon Meade the snapping, goggling-eyed turtle, is going to take command of the Army. And he's supported by General Slocum, General Sedgwick, and General Reynolds. They all will serve under him. Because this man is a fighter, he's no nonsense, he's a teetotaler, and once in a while he might have a glass of champagne. And that's it. If you try to force booze down his throat, he might be walking a post. He's got problems though. The chief of staff of Joe Hooker was Dan Butterfield. And they don't get along at all. Sickles doesn't get along with me. Because these three, Hooker, Butterfield, and Sickles, they're almost like frat brothers. Wherever they are, they have parties. There's rumors of booze, broads, and betting. This is gambling. This is just debauchery, and this is how Meade sees it. And this has been in the newspaper, and it follows Hooker right along. So now we're moving north into Pennsylvania. Certainly Meade is not going to enjoy his relationship with his chief of staff. He has to keep him because Lee's on the move, and Meade has the same orders: protect Washington City. So what's he do? He develops a plan called the Pipe Creek Circular. He sends it out to all his commanders, reaching all corps commanders. He's already communicating with them early and saying, listen, if we go north and we have to retreat, we have to protect Washington City, which is down south. We are going to spread out between Middleburg and these two towns, and following the Pipe Creek. He's not intending to use this. This is an in-case measure. And so he forms two wings. The circular forms two wings. The left wing, which will be commanded by Reynolds, and Slocum will have the right wing. And he'll have basically the 11th Corps, 12th Corps, and possibly the 5th Corps, while Reynolds has the rest. Well, we know what happens. Gettysburg, we'll have about 90,000. Robbie Lee will have roughly 75,000 men at his disposal. Fighting men. Longstreet's back. He's back from the south, and he's with Lee. The Army of the Potomac's a little different, not much. Whitfield Scott Hancock is now given command of the 2nd Corps and is the junior corps commander in the Army. Since George Meade took over the Army, George Sykes takes over the 5th Corps. John Sedgwick's down the 6th, Howard, Slocum, and Pleasanton now replaced Stoneman, who's never to be seen again, and Pleasanton will take over the cavalry. So we still have 7 corps plus cavalry moving north. Robert E. Lee now has a bigger problem. His problem is he doesn't have Jackson. So he decides to divide his army into 3. So his army from 2 corps to 3 corps, so some of the divisions and some of the brigades will be allocated to the 2 new corps commanders. Richard Buell, who was wounded in the war, and A.P. Hill, he's healthy, he's not healthy. At Gettysburg, he wasn't that well. He was almost hardly there, hardly impacted. Buell will be very, very cautious. Longstreet is very, he looks at this battle, he looks at the movement north and said, we better not get caught in the north. We should go south and around the Army of the Potomac and let them come to us. Lee doesn't want to hear it. He's already defeated us. Defeated the Army of the Potomac badly. Throughout his career since he took over the Army of Northern Virginia, Lee has been successful. He doesn't plan to lose here. But Lee, like many generals, issues cryptic orders. He figures his commanders will receive the orders and act accordingly, and maybe use some initiative. But none of them are Jackson. They're basically defensive, they're very cautious, they're methodical, and that's going to be a problem for Lee. At Gettysburg, so we have leadership issues on both sides. We have a command staff in the Army of Northern Virginia that we have brand new corps commanders. In the Army of the Potomac, we have a brand new commander who hasn't commanded an army yet. He commands the Army of the Potomac. He inherits some new corps commanders. He actually creates one, and he knows that the 11th Corps, Howard's Corps, and the 12th Corps don't get along, especially after Chancellorsville. As a matter of fact, the 11th Corps was not liked by the Army of the Potomac. German soldiers never really were part of the team. They always looked at the dark sheep of the army, and they were routed at Chancellorsville. Well, the first day, as we know in Gettysburg, the battle takes place northwest of town, when elements of Hill's 3rd Corps bump into Buford's dismounted cavalry division, and so the fight begins. Ewell comes in from the north and northeast, and the 1st Corps will also come in to help Buford, as well as the 11th Corps. So they will be fighting in here. The 12th Corps, we are at 2 taverns having lunch when this is happening. We're at 2 taverns, about 5-6 miles south of Gettysburg. But we could see, we were getting people, soldiers who were fleeing the battle, retreating from the battle, they were just coming in, some wounded, and they were shocked. And we said, and we could see, because we all had insignia, we could see that 11th Corps insignia, and my commander went ballistic. Again? Again they retreat? Again you're flanked? They were. They were flanked. Oops. They were flanked here. But the best move that they could do was go south. The good thing that General Howard did was to select the ground. Now we had Cemetery Ridge, Cemetery Hill is higher than obviously the township itself. We finally have the ground. We don't have the same bad ground that we had at Chancellorsville. We got something to fight with. The ground itself adds to good defense. So as we came down, who comes up with Hancock, who's been sent by me to take command because he knows Slocum and Howard, that's oil and water. And Slocum, even though he's the senior commander, is not going to want to command the field. And so he sends Hancock to take control. And what Slocum does, is, let me show you what happened is, the Hanover Road here, the 1st Division under General Williams is coming up. We are coming up the Tawny Town Road. We're going to sleep at the foot of the Little Round Top, and the 1st Division will come over and sleep somewhere here near Powers Hill. Slocum will put a defensive line across the ridge in case we need it. So it depends on what happens. We know that Ewell is commanded, take the hill if practicable. Very cryptic order. He doesn't. Because he figures his men are spent. He's facing 40 guns that are lined up, pointing at him towards town. He's not attacking. And Allegheny Johnson's division is late. So they're going to come in late. So he does not attack Culp's Hill, the flank. And as we know, this is the Army's defensive line, official. Culp's Hill, Cemetery Ridge, the Round Tops. Whereas Lee's army was very condensed at Chancellorsville, he is now spread over 6.5 miles. Well, we got about a 3-mile distance. We can move regiments, the brigades in and out very quickly, where Lee doesn't have that same luxury. And so that's a problem. But he expects his orders to be implemented immediately, and frankly, they're slow, and he's got problems with Longstreet. He does not really want to fight a defensive battle. He does not want to fight offensively. And Lee, although has always been touted as a defensive genius, he's more on the offense than anything else. He attacks, and he wants to attack here. He's already won day 1. He wants to win day 2. And what he wants to do, he wants to attack the flanks. Success at Chancellorsville, and wherever he fights, he finds flanks. He wants to use the right flank at Culp's Hill as a diversion, so Meade will not be tempted to bring troops from Culp's Hill to defend the ridge, and he will send Longstreet's corps against the line. Great plan. However, it took Longstreet all day to get organized. It took him all day. And he only gets involved at 4 o'clock, 4:30. By that time, we have gunfire or cannon fire off Bennett's Hill towards Culp's Hill, but we silenced those guns. Major Latham's 20 guns are destroyed. But Longstreet does initiate the attack. Now let's talk about Sickles. He's down right here in the low ground. And he's staring towards Seminary Ridge. And what does he see? The peach orchard is high, and he's down low. What does that remind him of? Hazel Grove. I was high. I was told to pull back, and I end up low, and I'm facing cannon fire after cannon fire. I'm not doing that. So without orders, he decides to move his corps towards the peach orchard, but they are so spread thin that he's got a salient. That means you're uncovered on both your left and your right. So Meade goes out to him and tells him you should be pulling back, but I don't think you're going to have time because the enemy's going to be running out. And sure enough, what Meade was hoping would happen is that with Sickles in the low ground, almost invisible, as Longstreet, if the attack came by echelon towards the Cemetery Hill, he could come out and flank him. That was not to be, because Sickles had already come out, and now we have a major gap in the line. And we know how much difficulty the 2nd Corps and the 5th Corps had in handling that attack. And towards the end of the day, around 6 o'clock, the 12th Corps is ordered to vacate Culp's Hill. Not to leave people, but to vacate it. To leave the flank, period. Craziest orders that we received, that I received, was to leave. I told General Slocum, you've got to go and beg to leave us a division. One division. We need a division, at least to maintain. Because we had built breastworks. Before that. We had built breastworks all day long on July 2nd. We had interlocking fields of fire all over that hill, all over Culp's Hill. We were ready. By noontime, the 12th Corps, elements of the 1st Corps, we were from Rock Creek all the way down to basically Cemetery Hill. We were really in a great defensive position. If you're the enemy at Bennett's Hill, this is what you're staring at. A very high, sharp peak of rock of Culp's Hill, which comes down, levels down into a saddle, and goes 45 degrees to lower Culp's Hill, which ends up at Rock Creek. And you have breastworks along the entire line. And I made sure that my boys built interlocking fields of fire, especially as we got into the lower saddle, with the 147th New York and the 149th New York, 137th New York. So now anybody coming to their middle will be hit from all sides. We're ready to take it, but the only thing we could do is wait and wait for orders. And then I'm ordered my only brigade is going to defend Culp's Hill. Everyone else is pulled out. The original orders were to leave the division, our division. But General Geary said he got orders to move to Cemetery Ridge. And so I was the only brigade left. And certainly couldn't cover the entire length of the field of fire that I was ordered. We couldn't cover the entire Culp's Hill. Usually you have double lines of fire. These are the guns. This is how we line up. I had to spread out and thin out my line every 3 or 4 feet to put a soldier. But my troops have been trained by me and my officers to fight 3 to 3.5 shots a minute and be accurate, or they got punished. They'd walk around with flour barrels on their head. I enjoyed that. They were more afraid of me than were the enemy. That's what I wanted. So when I gave an order, guess what? They obeyed immediately. And here, we were going to defend as much as we could all of the upper Culp's Hill and a portion of the lower Culp's Hill. The division moves out. The Corps moves out. Imagine the noise they made, clanking along, leaving. Ewell's troops, Alec Johnson's troops, certainly knew we were doing that. And so we end up with a firefight for 4 hours at Culp's Hill. That night, night fight. And after 4 hours, we certainly held. And I had made sure that we built a perpendicular set of breastworks called a traverse. And we had it built so that the 137 from New York, you can see it, the 137 in New York would use it. So while all this is happening, now we're in the dark, and Gary gets lost. He ends up in a cornfield. I think he toasted marshmallows. I think that's what he did. It's the only food he had, so he decided to camp and sing songs. Because if you're at Gettysburg and an experienced commander, and you hear firing in your front and on your left, don't you think you would go to the sound of the guns? But he was waiting for orders. He had been ordered. He had been ordered to go and assist General Hancock. He didn't move. So they will come back very late at night. Around 9 o'clock, the battles, especially on the ridge, has calmed down. Cemetery Hill held because a portion of the Army of Northern Virginia didn't attack very well. Ramsey's division did not attack. And we held. Elements of the Second Corps really helped the First Corps. So General Meade holds the Council of War. Now General Hooker held the Council of War too at Chancellorsville. His intent was to leave Chancellorsville. He wanted to get out of there. And his generals, we were telling him that you should stay and fight, General. We still have the numbers. We still can win this. He wouldn't hear of it, so we left. On July 2nd, General Meade is holding a Council of War again. He wants to evaluate his commanders because he wanted to know if any of these boys weren't ready to fight. He wanted them to fight. We didn't want to go anywhere. And sure enough, to the last man, the last one to speak was my commander, who said, stay and fight it out. And so we did. So this Council of War is very different from the one that was previously held only 2 months ago. So we stayed and fought. And this is what I was telling you about Culp's Hill. And I'm not going to go through all the details because my whole purpose of speaking to you tonight is how one battle affected the other. But here, my boys are getting hit by around 5,000 men from Johnson's division, while we got 1,370 officers and men, composed of 5 New York regiments, where I will get another 755 reinforcements from the 11th Corps and the 1st Corps. We've been badgered all day long on the first day. But we're going to hold after 4 hours. There's a traverse right around here. That the 137th, when they are attacked from the front, from the right, and the rear by the 10th Virginia, will scoot around the traverse and use that as a defensive position. And at that time, we received reinforcements from the 84th New York, the 147th New York, and others, Ohio and Illinois, that came to our aid. So we held 4 hours straight. The next day, 4:30 in the morning, see, we couldn't defend against the entire line. So there's a portion of Lower Culp's Hill that the George Stewart's Confederate Brigade occupied our works. And when the rest of the Corps came back that night, guess what? They thought they were starting getting shot at. They said, our men shooting? No, there's the Confederates shooting at. And certainly that was not a good thing. So they had to basically stay out of their works. But the division commanders, Slocum, and all brigade commanders met that night and said, what are we going to do? And Slocum said, he's just a man of wit. You get him out of there, get him off my hill. And he walked away. And so we planned where we had batteries, cannons set up, and at 4:30 in the morning, we would Stewart's position. And the battle on day 3 lasted for 7 hours. Nearly 500,000 bullets were fired by elements of the 11th, 12th Corps, 11th Corps, and 6th Corps, because we got help from Shaler's Brigade from the 6th Corps. This is the longest period that any group fought. Culp's Hill fought, there was a fight for 11 hours because Lee wanted this flank. On day 3, Lee really reinforced this where a total of about 12,000 men faced our corps plus elements from the other corps. We were about 11,000. It was almost 50-50, but we had the best defensive position where we could pull people out of the line of fire, bring in another brigade, so we'd have an ending volley. Men got out of the breastworks, another regiment would come in and fire. It went on and on and on. As a matter of fact, the Confederates were stacking up the dead to make up their own breastworks. I didn't want any of that. So I sent out 2 companies, capture the enemy, knock the bodies down, because we had to hit the enemy. I wasn't going to just shoot at bodies, I wanted to shoot at the men who were coming to attack us. The night before, it was so dark out there, all you could see were muzzle flashes. That's what we shot for. Shot to the ground, shot off rocks, because Culp's Hill was devoid of any brush, unlike the wilderness. This was trees and rocks. Didn't have much to hide behind. So we would bounce shots off the ground to hit them, and we did. So during the morning, I got an order from General Greene to stop wasting ammunition. What? Wrote back, send it back. I said, we're killing the enemy with the ammunition. He wrote back, we'll go right ahead and do it. And so we did. So around 11 o'clock, 11:30, the Battle of Culp's Hill was done. Lee did not take this flank. He did not take the left flank. And now, as we know, in the afternoon, he had the grand charge up the middle. But his idea was to take this. Because if he could have taken Culp's Hill, he was less than 400 yards away from the Baltimore Turnpike, where all our reserve cannon, all our supplies were there, and it was the best road to Washington. So he wanted this badly, because that was the way he operated, but he didn't do that. So those are my comments regards how Chancellorsville affected Culp's Hill, and I can tell you that every man under my command was itching for a fight. We did not win at Antietam. We did not win at Chancellorsville. With this position, there was no way we were going to get knocked off and lose. We would have died to the man here. And we certainly weren't going to let Robbie Lee take Gettysburg. Questions? That's all I have.
How many men do you lose?
We lost about 800 men wounded. What's interesting is Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain lost 32.7% of his men to killed, wounded, and missing. The Corps, Colonel Ireland, David Ireland, the 137 on my command, lost the same percentage. He lost about 300 men. He lost the most because he was hit from the front, hit from the side, and the rear. So that night fight, everybody's shooting at him. So he's losing men as he's pulling back, wheeling in reverse to get into the traverse. But we had very little casualties, I think, because of the defense and just the way we just attacked this very hard. You know, let's remember, you've got to climb that hill if you're the Army of Northern Virginia. You can't see me because our breastworks are below the rim, the edge, the military surface. We're below. We're about 20, 30 feet. If you've gone to Gettysburg, you've seen them. You have to climb down top of Culp's Hill to get to where the breastworks were. So if you're coming up, you don't see anything. So it's pitch dark. The canopy of trees, they couldn't see. So when they got the volleys of fire, which was like thunderclaps, they were getting mowed down. So now you've got to climb up. I mean, some of the commanders from the South rode on their horses trying to come up and inspire them, and we shot them down, including the horse. Nothing was coming our way. There was only one place near the 149th where the saddle is, where there was almost hand-to-hand combat, because they came to about 10, 12 feet from our position, but they were pushed back. So they never climbed the wall, they never climbed and never took our position. The only position they ended up, by luck, is as Maryland Stewarts kept feeding down the hill, we noticed that in the lower Culp's Hill there was nobody there, so they took it. That's why they were able to sleep on Culp's Hill, but we got rid of them in the morning. So our casualties were relatively low, which was good. The defensive, I think the defensive positions that we had, the breastworks that we built, and how we built them, where the entire Corps built them, was the difference. John Gary didn't want to build breastworks. He thought that if you have breastworks, or if you don't, guess what? You'll be cowards, you won't be able to fight. That's nonsense. Good breastworks provide protection, good defense, and from that point on, almost every battle in the war will have breastworks. Because that's how, later on, as you know, we're going to have ditches, we're going to have trenches, we're going to be going to that. So we lost relatively few men on Culp's Hill. Anyone else? Sir?
At Chancellorsville, when you showed Jackson looping down and coming around,
Yes.
how long did that take him to do that?
Took him a good portion of the day. It took a good portion of the day for him to do that. And he was spied on. Third Corps saw him, elements of the other Corps saw them, the balloons saw them, and they kept relaying messages to the 11th Corps to do something, but it was never done. So the 11th Corps was wide open, and they were left on their own, and they got hammered. So it took almost all day for that march. So we could have split at that point. If Hooker had been the kind of general we needed, he could have sent a portion of his army to take care of Jackson and the rest to take care of Lee. Because it looked like an anchor. This is us. And here's Jackson, and here's Lee. We could have crushed them. Wasn't done. We had 2 corps, full corps in reserve. Sir?
General, why do you believe you are less well-known and Culp's Hill is less well-known than somebody that was down the far end by the name of Joshua Chamberlain at Little Round Top?
Well, first of all, I am not a politician. My mother told me to don't look for compliments. You're going to get slapped in the behind if you think you do. So I wasn't raised that way. I was raised in Rhode Island as a Yankee. You kidding me? We don't take compliments. We just do our job. Also, my best commander, David Ireland, as the 11th and 12th Corps were merged into the 20th Corps. David Ireland dies in Atlanta from dysentery. But more importantly, we have a chain of command problem. The 11th and 12th Corps believed they were part of a wing. I don't know, pigeon wing, chicken wing, some kind of wing. Slocum believed he was the wing commander. So that made Alpheus Williams the Corps commander. And both of them showed up at the Council of War. Meade looked at Williams and said, "What are you doing here?" "Well, I'm the Corps commander." "No, you're not." So they really believed that. So when the reports have to be written after every battle, right? It had to be written. There was a problem because one of our generals was sent to quell the draft riots in New York in July, right after the battle. So his report came in late. That meant all the division report would be late. The Corps report would be late. Now, Meade has getting yelled at by Washington, "Where's your report? Where's the battle?" So he basically wrote down, "There was a battle on the right flank. We won." General Lockwood, who was new, who had seniority, was under Meade's direct command, who didn't fight there for almost nothing. His uniforms were all blue, bright blue, new fish. They hardly saw any action except clean their guns. Yet, he was given credit. That's why we're forgotten. Also, as time went on, as we know, Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain becomes governor, right? President of Baldwin. He goes on tours and really tells people how he won the battle, almost as much as Dan Sickles did. after the battle and after the war. So we were forgotten. After the battle, guess what? Culp's Hill was the #1 tour spot. This is where you went. You went to Culp's Hill to picnic at Spangler's Spring. You went and visit. But the trolley system came into play, which bypassed Culp's Hill, and you had all the speaking engagements and all the reputation of the 20th Maine and the reports, and we were forgotten. So my division, my brigade, all New Yorkers were forgotten. There were no medals of honor, there were no promotions. I was breveted these stars. I believe I should have gotten my second star because of Gettysburg. I had to wait till March 13th, 1865, along with a bunch, about maybe 50 other colonels, other generals who were brigade generals, received their stars along with people I didn't respect. So here I am. It's one of the reasons, it is the reason, that I decided personally to portray General George Sears Greene. Because I gave a seminar in Warwick, Rhode Island, right next to his home, his family home. And I was told to go into the conference room because I was early, and I see in the conference room as I turn on the lights, a lot of pictures of old Warwick, Rhode Island, there in the corner, buried in the corner, like a 5x7. I could tell it was a Civil War, man. It was a great hand man. General George Sears Greene, forgotten hero, Gettysburg. He was a Gettysburg? He was a forgotten hero? He's a brevet major general? He is the general from Rhode Island? Not celebrated very well, even in our own state. So that's why I decided to portray him, and frankly, his personality, very akin to mine. So I didn't have to really do anything much to portray the general. All I had to do was grow the beard, get my uniform, and learn everything I could about him. And it's been a pleasure, and it's been a journey to do that. And it's a pleasure to be here with you folks tonight.